Hey everyone, it's Christina, and we're back with another professional development workshop. Today we're going to be talking about how to code during an interview. So, what we'll be going over is the logistics of a coding interview, before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. So, first we're going to be going over logistics. So, online coding interviews are usually done on Google Docs or on an interactive platform such as Carrot. So pretty much Carrot is just an online compiler where you can type in code and it's more like an IDE. And there's an interviewer with which you are on the phone with while you're doing the coding interview. And you usually get one or two coding questions which have multiple levels. So by multiple levels, I mean that as you go through the question, if you get past the first phase, then the interviewer would say, okay, so how about what if this happened? For this question, and then they would give you another set amount of time to answer that question, and then they may either increase the difficulty of that question or introduce a new problem to that question or go on to another question which may also have multiple levels to it. So before the interview. So before the interview, you're going to review programming and data structures concepts beforehand so that when you go into the interview, you know how to do stuff. And so you're familiar with how to implement something without having to be confused about certain concepts. So be sure to have a quiet place set up for the interview and be sure to get there early so you aren't rushed and stressed right before the interview. Know what links to go to for the interview. So usually before the interview, about a couple days to a week, the recruiter will send you a link with the link so that you can do the interview. And then be sure to have either that link open right before the interview, or if it's a set time to open the link, have it set aside so that right before the interview, you'll know where to go until you're on time to the interview. And also before the interview, decide the programming language that you will be using and be sure that this programming language is the one you're most comfortable with. I know that there is a thought that you should use like a more like I guess real programming language as people say it, like C++ or Java. But if you're more familiar with Python or JavaScript, then use those languages because they don't really look at which programming language you use unless it's specified beforehand that the job will be in a specific programming language. So really just choose the one that you're most comfortable with so that you'll do the best that you can. So during the interview. During the interview, you're always going to want to think ahead. So be sure to think of your approach before you start implementing it, as well as state your approach to the interviewer before implementing it. By stating your approach to the interviewer, they'll be able to give you some tips on how to improve that approach so that you don't start implementing something that may not even be in the right direction. So, talking with the interviewer and talking about what you're planning on doing would be able to clear up anything that has any problems with it, or you'll be able to get any feedback that the interviewer thinks that you should know. Also know that there's more than one correct answer. There's no such thing as one way to do something. So with implementing something, you could implement something in many different with many different algorithms and many different data structures. There's many different efficiencies as how to do things, and there's many ways to implement many different data structures. Be sure to communicate with your interviewer and talk through your approach as you implement it, since one key during interviews is your ability to communicate with others. Since they're not necessarily looking for somebody who has the best coding ability, since there's lots of people who have very good coding abilities, but one thing they're looking for is someone who'd be able to communicate effectively. Since you're going to be working on a team and you're going to have to talk with many different team members and talk through like different solutions, it's a very key aspect that you know how to communicate with others. Also, be sure to ask questions since your interviewer is there to help you. They don't want to see you struggle because if you just try to go through it without asking questions, that'll be a red flag toward your inability to communicate. So if you hit any roadblocks, be sure to say that to your interviewer and they'll give you some tips on how to implement or how to continue on. Also, brute force then optimize if need be. So you don't need to get the most effective and most efficient solution from the get-go. It's okay to start off with a brute force solution and then talk to your interviewer and say, this is a brute force solution, but I believe that there's a more efficient solution that I could implement, but I'm going to implement the brute force solution first and then try to get it working. And then once I get it working, I'm going to implement a more optimized solution that has a faster runtime. And just be sure to communicate that to your interviewer so that they know that you're trying to start from getting it working and then you're trying to optimize it. Also, be sure to take your time. This isn't a race to finish first. You're not trying to finish it within like half the interview. They're not testing you on your ability to finish this coding question very fast. They're more testing you on to see how you approach the problem and your critical thinking skills. So your ability to come up with a solution that's efficient, or your ability to like start with a brute force solution and then optimize it to improve it. They're also looking to see if you solve it successfully and then come out with a working solution rather than the most efficient and most complex solution. They're not looking for complexity. They're looking for your ability to finish the question and then to come up with a good answer. And also, they're also looking for your ability to communicate effectively. So, like I said in the previous bullet points, communicating is very important since you are going to be working on a team with an employer. So, they want to see how you interact with people, how you ask questions, and then how you approach something and then communicate it to others. And then also in the end, be sure to test your code. Come up with different test cases to show to the interviewer that you know how the code works, you know what the inputs and outputs are, and that you can come up with different test cases for the code. So right here is an example of Google Doc coding interview. So this is kind of just how you could format your code, but this is pretty much just how you're going to be writing the code. It's going to be a regular Google Doc that there's no special formatting or anything. I would recommend when you're typing on a Google Doc to format it, since I've heard personally when I was taking an interview that people never format their code. They just kind of type it out and then it's just a straight line down and there's no indents or anything. And they told me that really set me apart since I was able to format my code and do the correct indentation and the correct brackets and everything. So be sure to format your code. And then in this photo, it shows that there's a way to format your code on Google Docs. So before you go into the interview, if you get access to the Google Doc beforehand, I would go in and set up this formatting so that once you're taking the interview, it'll automatically format you, which will make the interview a lot easier. And then this is an example of a Carrot coding interview. So right here, you can see that there's the code. And then while you're typing the code, you're going to be on sort of like a video chat with the interviewer. And then you'll be able to talk with them and communicate with them as you're typing the code out. And the thing about the Carrot coding interview is that the code actually compiles and runs. So that's the difference between the Carrot and the Google Doc interview, is that you have to make sure that your code actually compiles. Since in Google Doc coding, your code doesn't necessarily have to compile. I mean, it should work, but you don't have to show to the interviewer that it actually works in a compiler. So in a Carrot interview, you're more likely going to have to write code that 100% compiles, since you're going to be compiling and running it through the interview, and then there's also going to be test cases for the code. After the interview. After the interview, realize that every coding interview is a learning experience. So if you mess up on something, just take that and say, okay, this is what I'm going to improve on the next time I do an interview. Reflect on what went well and what didn't go well, and then just learn from that. And then also be sure to contact your recruiter if there were any problems with the interview, such as like your internet connection went out. I know that one time when I was doing my coding interview in Orbach Library, the interview just went out and my interview cut short. So I just contacted my recruiter and I said, hey, my interview got cut out because the internet in the library just went out, and then they let me schedule another interview. So be sure to tell that your recruiter. Just know that something going wrong is not an end all, and that they usually are pretty relaxed about it and they'll give you another chance. And just realize nobody's perfect. You don't have to implement a perfect solution. You don't have to be perfect during your interview. You just have to show what skills you have. Be sure to communicate effectively. I know that in a couple of interviews, I thought I messed up, but then I ended up moving on to the next round and then getting a job offer. So just know you don't have to be perfect. You can make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, as quoted from Hannah Montana, and nobody's perfect. Yes. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, be sure to ask in the comments.